Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Strickland. I'm your host, Shwin and this episode 513. I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Stacy. That is at StacyPatton89 on Twitter. Stacy, how you doing?
Doing pretty well.
That is good to hear. Hope that your summer is going well and that you're enjoying it as you claim to be.
Yeah, I can't lie. Seattle is not nearly as hot as the East Coast. I was on the East Coast for a couple of weeks. It's really nice not having swamp ass and 90-degree humid weather in July. So,
it's been beautiful here last couple of days. So it
not that
seems
humid.
like maybe it seems like maybe you were the problem. So maybe swamp ass goes
Is
where
it me
you are.
thing?
Yeah, maybe that's what you think. All right, we're not here to talk about swamp ass as much as I'm sure that would be very enjoyable for people. We're here to talk about basketball. Before we do that, to make a few announcements. First, being that Strickland has a YouTube channel where you can watch this podcast. If you haven't done so already, please like, subscribe to the channel, comment. That'd be a huge help to us. Strickland also has merchandise you can find on our website at www.strict.land. There's a link down taking to merchandise store. There's all kinds of cool stuff on there, like t-shirts, sweatshirts, hats, coffee mugs, water bottles, you name it, we got it. Strickland also has Patreon, which you can subscribe to. There are a number of different tiers. There's a $6 tier that gets you access to Strickland, the podcast that I host every Friday with Prez. You also get access to Takes from Obvious Bozos, a podcast hosted by Andrew Steele, aka Doug, along with Zach Blatter. And you get access to the Strickland Discord. The conversation never stops. There are further tiers. They say $9 tier that gets you access to Strickland Roll, my pod that I host now, along with YC, where we rant and rave about more things other than the Knicks. You also get access to wonderful premium articles by Matthew Murdo, one of the best in the business, and you get access to Strictly NFL, which you guess is a podcast about the NFL that is hosted by Constantine Metricos and Desmond Novak. There are further tiers. There's $15 tier, $30 tier, $50 tier, and a $100 tier that's going with a variety of additional benefits, like listening on pod recordings, merch discounts, and potentially hosting a podcast alongside yours truly one day, whether you choose to subscribe or not. Knows what be possible that you. So without further ado, let's get started. Last time we talked, I don't believe the Knicks had even played a single Summer League game. Since then, they have played 5, and they're done with Summer League. As a Summer League in its entirety, done. And there is now no more basketball of any kind by NBA teams until preseason. So with that, my question, Stacy, is did you have any thoughts about the Knicks' Summer League and, what I guess were your main takeaways? If you had main takeaways, to be completely honest, I did not watch it very closely. I did not watch it very much at all. And that was very relaxing. But, what I did see, I like Dior. Seems like they've maybe got something there, definitely worth I think keeping around and developing. I think is it Pate Dink or Dink?
I thought it was
what
Patel.
is it again? Is it Dink Pate?
Dink Patel.
I don't think it's Patel. I'm pretty sure no Patel has or ever will be capable of playing NBA basketball. Just as I'm sure no Shwinny Poo or Stacy Patton ever will, other than in the movies where one Stacy Patton did. But no, I mean, Dink Pate. So I mean, I think look, he made first team summer league. I saw he's seems kind of raw, but you can see with his size, he's got plus athleticism. He's his ball handling, considering his size, is quite advanced. I would say, probably not the best decision maker, but I think between those two guys. And then unfortunately, we know that, Pacome, he was out after basically midway through the second game. He didn't get to play much. Todd Kolek did not have a great summer league. I actually had a little bit more sympathetic, his performance than I think others are, which we can talk about. But yeah, I mean, I guess we can just start with those two in terms of Dink Pate and Diawara. I mean, did you see anything from them that you're like, ooh, that's pretty cool, and maybe this changes how I feel about what I don't want to say because I think we both understand that we should not probably have totally altered career trajectory expectations based on summer league. But do you view them, I guess, maybe as a little bit more intriguing and more worthwhile in terms of investment for the organization moving forward.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I think all of them get invested into. Their track record is pretty good. Even recently, everyone kind of has been down on the last draft, but Huck Porty looks like already a contributor. Kolek, when Brunson was out, was quite effective. You know, I mean, I think we never talk about it. We talk about Grimes and quickly, obviously, and McBride. We don't talk about the fact they turned a 58th pick into a guy that had rotation minutes here, and then he played for the Bucks in the playoffs even, and Jericho Sims, right? That is no small thing, right? So there's going to be investment. I don't think there's anyone who's been neglected or underused, right? To talk about these players specifically, I really loved what I saw from Diawara. I love the motor. Motor can be a tricky thing when evaluating someone's ceiling, because can you do it for 30 minutes a night? I wonder, for example, with Obi Toppin, does that put a bit of a cap on his minutes because he has to play that high energy style? That's what makes him effective, which is great. But it's difficult to do that for 30 minutes. That that affects someone maybe like Deuce as well. But I love the motor. I think he's very athletic, massive frame. I think he's a little bit raw on defense. But I really loved, I mean, the playmaking is what really stood out. Somebody said he might be the best passer on the roster after Kolek, which for Summer League is a low bar, but you could see it, right? He made some very eye-opening passes. Good body control, I think. And I don't buy the shot yet for like next season. But I thought his touch around the rim was very good. He hit like a little mid-range pull-up. It isn't pull-up. It was out of the three-point position. So there's a lot to like. He's a very smart player. I mean, I think the combination of feel and athleticism with ball handling is that's an easy thing to bet on, and I don't think his touch is so bad. With Pate, I think it's starting to. I mean, the NBA folded the Ignite, right? They folded the G League Ignite.
Yeah. Yep.
And you're starting to see why, because there have been promising prospects who just haven't. I mean, Kuminga may be the best one right now, and he was thought of as very high, but he hasn't gotten consistent minutes. He's going to demand a big extension because of his talent. But I think there's fair questions. You look at him, you look at Scoot, you look at a guy on the Knicks G League team or Summer League team, Marjan Beauchamp. It clearly it wasn't the best development environment. It doesn't look like. So I give Pate, when you talk about does he make the best decisions? Well, he's 19, and his last year I don't think was an environment particularly conducive to that. So with Pate, but it's a great home run swing for an undrafted free agent, right? There is size, athleticism, very good athleticism, and ball handling ability. That's a rare combination. You need more than that. And it doesn't necessarily always pan out. In Summer League, it's tough to tell. Is this, I mean, how I would want to look at it is, I think a guy like Scoot Henderson started to turn his career, well, I don't want to say turn his career around, but he improved after a disappointing rookie year. It went in the shadows, but it was clearly never a question of work ethic or the ability to develop or those kind of things, right? It was just he probably needed a better environment than the Ignite. That's not something you can put on an 18-year-old kid for making that decision. So with Pate, that's something we don't know yet. But if he's willing to put in that work, the shot is still not there. But we've seen, I don't think he's Amen Thompson, but we've seen that just size, athleticism, ball handling ability can get you pretty far. And you coach him up on some of those. On that playmaking, it's probably a year or two away, but I think this is still important, even if they don't contribute this year. We've talked. I mean, we had Sam Quinn on the pod. You get 2 years in the second apron. And that's what the Knicks are starting. They're not on the second apron this year, but they will be soon. And I think
in all likelihood, they should be above the second apron following this upcoming season.
Yeah. So, I think there's an article today that they're going to sign Bridges to a lucrative extension to keep him here for a while. Yeah. So that's your 2-year window. And then at the end of that 2-year window, I think Brunson's contract will also be up or he'll be expiring. He'll be in his contract will be expiring. I think that always bothers me. We're like, he's expiring. No, hopefully not.
No, it's he has an option. He has a player option for the following season. So in all likelihood, I mean, we'll see. 3 years is a long time, but you would imagine after these 3 years, basically the way it would be is that after they should be able to keep the core of this team if they want to, if they choose to, keep the core of this roster together for the next 3 years. So this upcoming season and the two after that. At that point, Brunson would have a player option for the following year. Assuming everything goes as expected, he would probably opt out and then get paid. Josh Hart would be his contract would be he would have a team option for the follow. Actually, no, he'd be done. Josh Hart would be done. He would be expired, as you would like to put it, Stacy. Karl Anthony Towns,
The Departed.
Karl Anthony Towns will have, at least again, if they don't come to an extension or anything, his contract would be off the books. Mikal Bridges would have 2 years left on his contract. OG Anunoby would have 2 years. Or sorry, Bridges would have 3 years left on his contract, I should say. Actually, no. Fucking hell. No, 2 years left on his contract. Assuming he takes a max extension this offseason. OG Anunoby would have 1 year left on his contract. Deuce McBride, his contract expires the year before that. So he would be, either on the roster, having extended, or we don't know. Right now, he's not technically on the books for that year. Mitch Robinson, again, not technically on the books for that year. Again, and then if you want to go into the rookie or the younger guys, Pacome, Kolek, both of them would be free agents at the end of that season. Huck Porty, he's a free agent at the end of next season. We'll see the Knicks. He's a restricted free agent at the end of next season. Knicks will have a decision to make there. And then we don't know what the status is yet of, Diawara or Pate or even for that matter, McCullough Jr. So effectively in 3 years' time, this team could just be. I mean, we have no way of knowing what this roster will look like in 3 years' time. Which is, that's generally the case in the NBA, anyways, with the amount of roster turnover we see nowadays. This is a league that's always had turnover, but it's even crazier now with all the apron rules. But to your point,
the point I'm making is that even if these guys aren't immediate contributors, when we get to that point where we've exhausted that second apron, whatever happens, whether we win a championship or not, there are going to be tough decisions to be made. And it helps to have, if Pate in 3 years has realized a lot of his potential, right? And what do I see as that potential? A quality, let's say, secondary ball handler right now, get to the rim. I guess like what we'd hoped RJ Barrett would be, where somebody could put pressure on the rim, make better decisions, and translate that frame on defense. That's the guy. Then you're like, okay, if we have to offload Cat, if we're moving Bridges, we have to sign Brunson and all that. Then these are the kinds of things. If Dadier turns into, viable wing, right? Batum was the comp I went to out of the draft. I'm a little bit more hesitant on that now, but I liked what I saw. We can talk about that. But that's why, people are like, well, they need to play this year. I think they should. But, even if they're not contributors this year, even the second year guys, you need to start building that foundation so that whatever happens, we are going to hit that reset cliff in a couple years. And that's where, having those viable guys, these are rotation players that deserve a chance, right? Dink Pate off the bench, let's say that final year, has looked really good. Maybe we can move Bridges. Maybe we can move OG. Those are the kinds of things they're going to give you. And that is important. I'll say that as an Eagles fan, that long-term thinking and development, it matters a lot more than we think when we're focused on the immediate rewards.
Yeah, I'm, I think that, you would love, first of all, the summer league stuff. I just can't, I just find all
It's
the
not real basketball.
Yeah, I find all the conversation around it like so insane to
I
me.
mean, like you mentioned, right? People freaking out over Kolek was insane to me when you've seen him play well with Brunson out. Like,
Yeah, like he. I mean,
like he can't play NBA basketball.
yeah, and I'm not suggesting like Tyler Kolek was some world beater when he played last year, but like it's just kind of weird to to care more about this than like how he played in the NBA. And I would I would suggest that like this probably exposed his limitations in a way that when he plays on the actual Knicks with like actual players around him who can finish the who can take advantage kind of and also help him
By moving,
like
right? Moving to
yeah,
places he'd
yeah,
expect, right? So
and also just like play it allows him to play to his strengths, right? Like and it covers for some of his weaknesses with the guys that the Knicks have. And like so I've really never been of the opinion that Kolek has the ability to be some like driving force of winning, but
yeah,
I
but a quality
definitely
backup point guard, I
right.
don't think.
I've seen enough from him that I'm like, yeah, this guy can like give you 10 to 15 regular season minutes a night and you're probably fine. Um and if that's all he is, like, yeah, I mean, is it disappointing? Would you want more?
But it's the 34th pick in the draft.
Right.
Everyone thinks about Deuce, but we don't
But
think
I
about
mean,
Cleanthony Early, right? That's more than Cleanthony Early gave us, right?
well,
So
it's like you can be disappointed because it's like, oh, the Knicks traded 3 seconds to get this pick, and then they gave him the most expensive second year or a second round contract for a rookie ever, and like, sure, like, so that maybe that result isn't what you want or what you would ideally expect, but like, it's not a killer, and I know that's kind of like a bullshit framing of it, where it's like, oh, so like just because it's not a home like because it's just because it's not a killer doesn't mean you can't criticize it. I agree with that. You can criticize it. You have a problem with the Kolek pick and him as a prospect and a player at this point. Fair enough. I just kind of think it's like a little bit overblown, and
I
you
wouldn't
know,
base it on summer league. That's
I
right.
wouldn't base it on summer league. I think the summer league stuff is stupid. But like look, I also would say that
He also had some good performances.
if you
And his when he played with Diawara, a high field guy, they were on the same page, right? And
yeah,
that helped Kolek. And that's
I,
not a knock on Kolek, but it is to say that he needs to play with guys on the same page as, so he can do his thing.
well,
That's how he is the ability.
I also just don't like the Knicks drafted quickly 25th. They draft Grimes 25th in the next year's draft. They draft Deuce 34th in that next year's draft, or 36th, whichever one it was. I forget. They had 2 picks. I think he was the 36th
One
pick.
was
Actually,
Rokas and one
yeah,
was
I'm pretty sure it was the 36th pick. Like so maybe if you consistently pick in that range, you're gonna have some misses. And we've seen them miss, right? Like we saw them miss on fucking Keels, which like, look, you can go look at that draft and be like, well, there really wasn't anybody in that draft, and I'll agree with you. End of the day, it is who it is. They picked the guy, he sucked, he was off the team in a year. We don't
I mean,
have
tell that
I
to
think
that
it's
Trevor Keels guy. They never gave him a
yeah,
chance.
I know. But they don't have they didn't draft anybody in 2023. And then this past season, they drafted 4 guys, none of whom played enough to say anything definitive about them, good or bad for me. Like, and the Pacome one is always interesting because we know that like part of the reason he was drafted is he was willing to play ball with them on his contract for his first year in the league. And we also know he was like a project. Like he was going to be a guy who was, to make the joke that everybody knows, 2 years away from being 2 years away. So like he's not a guy to me that I'm either super bullish or super pessimistic about at this stage. I'm just kind of like, he is in the process. Like I think maybe next year is the one where
He's in Joel Embiid.
yeah, but next year is the one where he's gonna. I think he'll have a much better idea of how to how to feel about him. Hopefully he can play this year. Apparently there's reporting that he shoots way better in practice and stuff like that. Much better than he has so far in games. It can take guys time to rep out.
We saw that with Deuce, right? So
yeah, and it's not just Deuce. It's multiple guys. Like it can take times to rep out from, okay, I'm good in practice. Okay, I'm good in scrimmages. Okay, I'm good in 5-on-5 to, okay, I'm good in actual game time. So I'm not either in or out on him. I think there's stuff that he needs to improve from a mental standpoint of like, I think you need to be more willing to assert yourself. I think there are times that, and again, we're talking about a very, very small sample in summer league, but there are times to me around watching him, I'm like, I think you're a little too okay with Marjan Beauchamp just like doing whatever and hanging out in the corner. Like, I would like him to be a little bit more assertive, but again, like I don't know what else to say about him. But with Kolek and Huckbordy, I think we've seen good flashes from them at the pro level. Hopefully, we see more of that this year. And then we'll see what happens with the guy they picked this year, which is Diawara, who I think, like you mentioned, has high feel. Um, I would not be surprised if he. I mean, look, they drafted him for a reason. I do not think they would have just drafted him to like for the fuck of it. Like they must have seen something they like. And yes, do I think that there's something to the idea of like has the same agent as Yabusele? Like, yeah, sure, that stuff always happens. But even within that, like, I don't think they would have just drafted him if they thought he sucked just because of like he has the same agent as Yabusele. But even with that, I wouldn't. I would guess. I would bet. I guess maybe a better way. I would bet since they were in Vegas. I would bet that the Knicks saw flashes from Diawara that maybe that would have elevated kind of like, oh shit, I didn't
Is
realize
that
like,
something I'm interested in?
yeah, just kind of like,
He
oh
has a
shit,
22-inch cock. That's what you're saying.
I am not saying that. I'm saying that I think that there's flashes of his play that you would have been like, oh, okay, like this is not something that I expected to see from him at this point already. And that kind of, to me, played out over the course of the summer league in the games he played, where like it felt like each game he got more minutes, and in those minutes they were giving him more responsibility,
He was
more
playing
time.
functionally point guard when I watched.
Right, they were
I was
giving
with
him more
Kolek
time.
off. Yeah,
They
but
were giving him more time on the ball. They're giving him more responsibility, and for that
I mean,
reason,
if you look at the roles he played, he was small ball 5. He was functionally a point forward. He was also a floor spacer. He kind of showed it all. And I think that's, if you look at what we have been screaming about, is they lack athleticism, right? Even OG, we see he struggles sometimes to finish at the rim. He might be the most athletic non-big that the Knicks have. They do have a little bit of a lack of athleticism, and they don't play the most cohesive style on offense for now. We'll see what happens with Mike Brown. So I think the guys they've been trying to get, Beauchamp was a toolsy athlete, right? Dink Pate is a toolsy athlete. Diawara, massive frame, athletic, and has that feel. So they're and Dadia, I think, applies there too. He's not a great athlete, but he's got great dimensions and fluidity for his size. So they're clearly trying to find people like that because I think they realize that Bridges and OG are probably one of them was going to have to go at the end of this, but also they just need that energy guy that they seem to lack in the play. Even a guy like Neesmith, you saw what he gave the Pacers, right? We are missing something like that from a role player. And I think that's what he gives you. And with Dadier, I think that I actually buy the shooting. Prez buys the shooting, so that's a big feather in his cap. But the form looks fluid. He's not scared to shoot. With Frank, the percentages were good, but I think the big thing was that he just had such a slow release, right? You don't see that with Dadier. He doesn't do much on ball, so he can disappear for periods, but he runs the floor. He knows where to be. When I saw him play in regular season against the Celtics, and even the preseason, Celtics was not a good game. So I'm talking about preseason more, but there were many instances where I felt like he has a high motor, so he is not afraid to mix it up, but he rarely came away with those 50-50 balls. So to me, I attributed that to strength. Prez, when I talked with him about this, was like, no, it's not a strength issue. I would like to see, I think he has the ability, because he's willing to mix it up, because he's a smart guy, I think he has good hands, to come away with more of those 50-50 balls. Those are the kinds of things more than the shot, because I think that his feel, like, he's not going to hijack the offense. Maybe one day we'll want him to. I'm not there yet. But he's in the right spots. He makes the right decisions. those are the things when we drafted him. I thought like, well, okay, you're drafting a raw, toolsy 19-year-old. He probably doesn't have any idea to play the fucking game. That's not the case. I actually think he has, for his age especially, a pretty advanced understanding of like this. Like I said, what his role is, where he needs to be, what kind of decisions to make, where everyone else is, where he needs to be on defense. It's more to me just kind of he needs to hit shots. And I think when he's in the position, just making plays, that might be a confidence thing. That might be, some subtle skill things that might be beyond us. But I'm reasonably, if like, let me ask you this, like, if you had to rank, I guess, among the names we've talked about, I know you're not a Marjan Beauchamp guy, but feel free to include him if you want.
I will
Um,
not.
how would you kind of rank if you had to tier them? For me, like in terms of optimism, Ariel Hukporti, 100%, no doubt, is already an NBA rotation player. I think he's already better than Jericho Sims, who was getting rotation minutes for us. So he is in his own tier to me. A tier below that, I would put Kolek and Dadier, where I've seen enough flashes to buy that they can be rotation players right now. They are very different players. I just see Kolek's ceiling lower, just because he's a smaller guard who can't create much space. I do buy the ball handling and the decision. Like I think he can be a viable point guard, Tyus Jones mold. I don't think he's that good. And then Dadier, I think, is more like, I think he can get on the floor, and I think the upside is massive. And then I would put, I haven't seen Dior in an NBA game, so I can't equate him to those two. I would put him next over Pate, the next tier I would say is Diawara, where it's like, it's very promising. Like, it's very easy to see. I just have to see it. And then with Pate, I think that's just a pure project. But I'd be curious, if you're aligned with that, or if you would.
Yeah, the Pate thing for me, like, I have no idea what the hell his numbers were in summer league. I'm not really sure I should care about it because.
Well, there's an article I do want to plug, which I think you should read too, by Owen Phillips, the F5 Substack, about summer league stats you can trust.
Yeah, he writes really long articles. I'm not going to read it.
But he had some graphics in this one, Shwin. So even if you were paid to lead, not to read. So essentially what the takeaway are that, like, the things that stick, right? When he's saying that what happens in summer league, is that predictive of what happens in the rookie season, right? Does that stick? It's 3-point attempt rate, 3-point attempt rate, assists, blocks, turnout, total rebounds, and offensive rebounds, not defensive rebounds. And what doesn't stick, but we often over-index on, are things like,
percentages.
Percentages. Yeah, 3-point percentage is literally the least sticky one. It's much more indicative of how often you shoot is much more indicative of what you're going to look like.
I think turnovers too were one that he had, right?
Turnovers were other. So like there's sticky stats where it's a high correlation. There's other stats where it's like doesn't
maybe not
much.
Yeah.
So points were in there, and all that, right? So it's kind of the traditional counting stats. And then steals, that was interesting to me because that's something I would have thought would stick, but steals were not sticky. I guess it's a low volume.
I thought this year's summer league was, again, like, I'm not going to pretend I was watching a lot of summer league, but from what I saw, it felt like a lot of teams watched the playoffs and were like, you know what, we're going to press full court. Let's see what happens. I just thought that was, like, in general, you get more of that in summer league anyway, because you get guys that are like trying to stand out, right? So they're more inclined to like go press for 90, 94 feet and all that type of shit. But like, it just felt even more so this year in summer league than in past seasons. So
to the point where I felt when a team didn't press, I was like, whoa, why are they conceding that? This team is because when you don't press, the teams run. That's the other part of it, right? Like, so it's almost like you have to, because otherwise they're going to run and your defense is already compromised. So
yeah, I mean, it's pretty interesting. But yeah, like the turnovers one doesn't surprise me too much, especially because, like, I mean, you saw it, you could see it throughout summer league where it's like guys they have no chemistry, so they're kind of making passes in the blind almost, where you're like, oh shit, I think this guy is going to go cut to the corner, but oh, he didn't. Oh, I think this guy's going to cut to the hoop. Oh, he's not. Like, so I think there's always
jack up shots where normally they would pass because they're not sure he will make the cut, right?
So. Right. So that's always like, the turnovers one makes sense to me. But yeah, I mean, the summer league is just, I think I'm very happy that there's no basketball for a couple of months, and I'm very excited for there soon to be a lot of arguments on the timeline about Jordan versus LeBron and Jokic's defense.
You could join
And
tennis Twitter, right? It's all Djokovic stands, and
I will not be joining tennis Twitter. But as much as I enjoy tennis, I will not be joining tennis Twitter. But yeah, like I don't know that I saw pretty much what I wanted to see from the guys who participated in summer league, more so from Dior than anybody else. The Dink Pate thing, like again, like with his percentages, it doesn't matter to me. Even if he shot well. I think he shot okay, better than his numbers with the G League night. But I tend to put more stock in those numbers, even though, as you pointed out, the G League night, just whatever the hell was going on there, was not conducive to players finding success. But I think what I saw enough of from Dink Pate was like, okay, if you can get this guy to like rein in some of his bullshit and make better decisions, the tools and like the contours of a functional and honestly quite versatile NBA wing player are there. Like this sounds,
not just the percentages. I don't really buy the shot yet. It's like
yeah, the shot looks very hitchy to me, and I'm
yeah.
not a shot doctor, but it doesn't look clean.
But he has the tools where, like, yeah, like I'm gonna bring up Amen again, right? Still finds a way, right? So that if you can put the right lineup around him, it's less of an issue, right?
Yeah,
So
we'll have to call him the Jeff Goldblum of the Knicks projects. Life finds a way. No, like, but with Dink Pate, I think that it wouldn't totally shock me, and this is going to sound like very damning with faint praise, but you've got to consider he's basically an undrafted. I mean, not basically, he is. He's an undrafted player. Like, I watched him, and I'm like, I think there's like a world where you end up having like you end up to getting to like a Karis LeVert level. Like, I could see that occurring. Do I think it's likely? Probably not, because as like thoroughly mediocre as you might find Karis LeVert to be at the NBA level, um, he has had a very long NBA career at this point, and he is like he's a 6'5", whatever is he like? What was LeVert? 6'7"?
he's, I think, 6'5", but he has long ass arms. So
Yeah, I mean, and he's like, jitterbuggy, and he's a good ball handler for his size and all that type of shit. I can see Dink Pate like kind of hitting that type of a
outcome.
maybe like a career outcome, which would be again like if the Knicks get that out of Dink Pate, yeah, they will have done very, very well. It's a and here I am not suggesting that's his most likely outcome. I'm just saying that is a possible, probably like a high end outcome for him, honestly. So look, he's a fun project, and they have time to like throw him in the G League and develop him and taking their time with him. So I'm not I'm interested to see what Dink Pate looks like in a year's time. I think that'd be a fun project for the Knicks. Diawara, I would be lying if I said I think I might even put him already in that Huck 40 and Kolek kind of like Diawara. Maybe I'd probably put him in the same level. Sorry, not as, but I probably put him in the same level to me in some ways. And I don't want to. Maybe level is the wrong word, but like I think the Knicks. One, I think the Knicks should bring him in. I think they should sign him to an NBA contract and get him on the roster. That's what I think they should do. For a couple of reasons. One, the biggest reason is if they send him back to Europe, the team that he's on, they have no they have no incentive to like care about his development and give him time on the court because he's not theirs anymore. They don't control him, and if he's good, the Knicks bring him over. If he's bad, well, he's bad. Like there's no benefit to the short term pain for long term gain approach with him. So I would not want to send him back over there. The second thing is I think the Knicks are good with their development and development staff, and I think getting him in here so that you can oversee that development as soon as possible is good. Part of that is also like he is a foreign player who will need time to adjust and get used to like living in a different country and
Are you saying
living
he
in a
needs to acclimate, like all immigrants need to acclimate, or
right. He has to get used to living in a police state and all these type of various things that he'll have to get used to. And like he I think that process starting sooner rather than later makes sense. I think the fact that they have Yabusele here,
And
this
Dadier
might,
is a friend of him.
yeah, Dottie is a friend of his, but I think the Yabusele thing is interesting. And I know this sounds probably maybe stupid to people, and I don't really care. This is just my theory. I think that having Yabusele here is a good reason actually to bring Diawara over, and I think it might be good for Dadier as well, because like I don't think the Knicks had like, I don't think anybody on the team was like an asshole last year. I don't think they were like ignoring young guys or whatever. Um, but I do think that there is something to the idea of like a couple French guys having a French veteran to lean on in the locker room and just kind of pick their brain and ask questions and get acclimated with a player like that. And Yabusele obviously has had experience, right? Where he first came to the league with Boston and he washed out. And he went back to Europe and he's played for a while over there and had to earn his way back into the league. And I think having that type of guy that they can relate to on a level that's different than like for them, probably, in terms of it's their countrymen. It's different than like Josh Hart or Karl Anthony Towns and like look, Carl Towns especially, and like some of these guys, they have such different paths than any of them. So I think there is a value to stuff like that, and it's like it's not like a very serious kind of like, oh my god, if they don't do it, this is the worst thing ever. But to me, bring the kid over, get him into your program, so you can start overseeing his development. That would be the most prudent path because there is stuff there. The passing really, really stood out to me. Like I couldn't kind of believe some of the passes he was able to make. And this is like with his handle, which honestly, over the course of summer league, I would say like when I first watched him dribble, I was like,
Kendrick
what?
Perkins.
Yeah, I was like, what is this? And then by the end, I was like, yeah, this is cool. Yeah, you can run a pick and roll. That totally makes sense. So to kind of like see that level up, or not even level up, but just like you could visibly see the difference from first summer league game to the final summer league game. That kind of speaks almost to the notion or to the argument to bring him over because it's like this looked like a player to me who played better as he got more and more and more and more comfortable in his surroundings, in his environment, in what he was being asked to do. So I don't know how I would tier all these guys the way you did, but like, I think that I put Diawara and Dadier, like I label both those two guys and Dink Pate as like fun projects, but I do put the first two, the former two, the French guys, uh, on a higher tier than Dink Pate in terms of like how I perceive the likelihood of the fun project yielding fun results versus just fun project ends up blowing up in my face. Um, so I'm very intrigued by Diawara. I think the Knicks, I don't want to say the Knicks got one, but I do think they at least, when you draft somebody 51st, and we all experienced it during the draft where we're like, oh my God, I wish they'd taken this guy. I wish they could get that guy. Why didn't they trade up for this guy? So when you're waiting that long, and then you draft a kid, and you're like, I guarantee you nobody talked about Muhammad Diawara prior to the fucking draft. None of us talked about him. He was not on anybody's radar.
Prez, I think, did. Well, no, the Knicks did work him out, so it was talked about.
Nobody was like, Muhammad Diawara is the one. Just watch out for this guy. So your expectations are already like, all right, well, who the fuck is this? Or just he's gonna play summer league, he's gonna go back. But then to see how he played and everything, it's nice. It's nice to have that feeling that you can carry into the summer as a fan.
Well, but I think it's also like I was saying before, the shift they've made a little bit, right? Where they used to go after
toolsy guys.
Yeah, right. They used to go after combo guard. That was the thing, right? They found this gold mine that like guys who aren't that athletic, aren't 6'6", 6'5". Even Grimes, right? His measurements were not elite or anything. 6'4", 6'8", wingspan, but are skilled, right? And now they're going towards, and that I think is still, as much as the passing and kind of the ball handling was great, Dior is like fucking massive, right? I think he has a 9'4" standing reach. That is center level. He is very athletic. would immediately become one of the more athletic players on the roster. Um, and and with Pate, you're seeing that same kind of. I think that's the way to do it, because when they drafted Grimes, they needed contributors. Now what they need is guys who are going to become the next wave whenever we do. It's like that splitter meme, right? With Brunson, or I guess is Master Splitter, and Kolek and Dadier and Diawara and um, Huckporty are the turtles, right? So, but I think I would put Huckporty in his own tier. Like, I'm very confident, whether it's here or somewhere else, that guy is going to be, if not a starting center, a long time rotation center.
Yeah. But yeah, Diawara is just like I don't know, like you mentioned, the tools he's done, like they are now drafting players, and like this goes back to the idea of finding market inefficiencies, right? So like at one point in time, they might have been like, oh, combo guards, like teams are not valuing this position enough. Now we know that position in a lot of ways is being devalued across the league. So maybe maybe they felt that way now for a couple of years, and that has been part of their shift away from targeting.
Well, I think it's more that combo guards who play defense, right? That was Quickly's big thing. I think that combo guards who play defense. I think now, if you're a combo guard who projects well on defense, it wasn't just the Knicks, right? Luguentz Dort, there's other guys in that mold. I think that shift started when Davion Mitchell went ninth, because teams are valuing, like you said, everyone's pressing now, so teams are valuing point of attack defense. So you look at a guy like Devin Carter, where he might have gone in the Quickly range a couple years before. So to your point, I think that's where the market adjusted. So now the combo guards you have in that late first round range are specialists, right? So then it doesn't make much more sense, because you can find a guy like that for cheap in free agency. So that's where I think the market has shifted. It's more nuanced now on the combo guards.
And I also think that once Brunson is really good, you kind of have to devalue that a little bit in your how you view roster construction. But they the market inefficiency, it's like finding things that are devalued by the market, and that's why it's a constantly changing thing, right? Like, I mean, the most famous thing is the Oakland A's used to, like, with Billy Beane, they used to never draft high school guys. They would just not do it because they were like, this is the worst bet that teams make, and their success rate is super low. And then as more teams kind of copied their methods, they're like, okay, well, now what's the market inefficiency? And it's like, oh, well, not everybody is avoiding drafting these high school guys. So actually, this has now become a market inefficiency for us to exploit. So now they've been drafting now for a few years. At least I don't know. I don't follow baseball that closely, but I know they changed their process to start drafting more high school guys.
They also said, like, they also previously were like, fielding percentage doesn't matter. We don't care about defense. And then a couple years later, Billy Beane was like, the biggest market inefficiency right now is fielding. So,
yeah, right. So it's like these things always change over time, and yeah, like I think with these guys are drafting now, it's like I don't know if they have had any change in that to the degree that we're talking about with like Billy Beane and the Oakland A's, but it does feel like they're like, okay, we care a little less right now about the immediate production potential for a player versus like, okay, we think in 2 or 3 years, this guy has a chance to do X, Y, and Z for us. And given his size, can add versatility and give us flexibility in ways that other players or different prospects might not give us. And that makes sense to me because you're probably looking at your roster, and like to your point, this is why you have to value the long term over, and this is the hardest part about being an executive. You're probably looking at your roster, you're like, look, a lot of these young guys, if we're still valuing what can you do for me today equally to maybe what these players are or what these prospects will be in 2 or 3 years' time, when we might need more immediate injection of talent or something, like, I don't know. I think it makes sense to take a longer view at a time when you kind of know who your top 7 guys are already in your rotation. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't value a player who can deliver right away. But it probably does mean that if it might mean that you change how much like you're maybe valuing the third year potential of players moving forward and your long term potential of players than you had previously. Where I think they did put a premium on like we want to make sure that these guys can come in and they're ready if called upon to play real rotation minutes.
And that was the
Uh,
Obi pick, right? That was the biggest example, right? He was the
Yeah,
most
I mean,
throwaway.
I think even quickly was an example of it because he had played 2 years. He had played big minutes at Kentucky his second year.
He's
Grimes,
SEC Player of the Year, yeah.
yeah,
So
Grimes is another one. Even Deuce, right? Like all three of those guys were like they had played serious college minutes, had played for serious programs at a fairly high level, um, and you kind of had a baseline of skills with them all where it was like they can shoot threes, they can defend. Um, in Quickly's case, he could dribble and handle the ball a bit. So, like knowing those things, you were kind of like, okay, yeah, we just think these guys because we're going to put them next to more skilled offensive players. So we're not asking them to do as much in terms of creation, putting that load on them. We trust that their ability to thrive off of that, and then they can build out their games from there. Whereas now it seems more like, all right, we kind of have an idea of what this player might be, but we don't think he's going to be that player for a couple of years. But we also don't give a shit because for the next couple of years, whoever we draft is very unlikely to play major minutes in our rotation as is. And I know there are people that will disagree with that, but I think there are people who disagree with anything. You're never going to do some. You're never going to make everybody happy, and um, I for one have been a bit annoyed, or I was annoyed earlier in the offseason where it felt like, oh my God, what are the Knicks doing? Like it's like we went from like, oh, what are the Knicks doing with their coaching search to oh my God, why didn't they draft somebody to currently what's the new oh my God, what are the Knicks doing with their coaching staff? It's like I don't know. I think they've probably earned the benefit of the doubt with all this stuff. I mean, there's a freak out before free agency, right? Where it's like, oh, they don't have a coach. How are they possibly gonna like? Why would anybody sign here? And it's like, because it's probably not how you think it works. Like, it's probably not how you think it works. And obviously I mean, we'll see how the signings actually work out. But on the surface, yeah, if you told me prior to free agency the Knicks will get Jordan Clarkson and Gershon Yabusele, I would have been like, yeah, that sounds good. Like that's pretty
fine.
solid.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty good. So they're in a good position. We'll see what comes of it all. And I have been intrigued by the summer league additions they made. If nothing else, we'll see who they bring back. They haven't signed anybody officially to either the two ways, and they have as you mentioned, they have to figure out stuff with the Mikal Bridges extension. I'm pretty confident he will get extended. I'm not
What are
sure
they going to do
when.
with Mitch too, right? And how do you structure that with the second apron next year, right?
Yeah, the Mitch thing is interesting. I wouldn't be surprised if they play out the Mitch one. I think they can extend him at any point into next season as well. So they might be like, let's see what he looks like in February.
Does he stay healthy, really?
Yeah, I mean that's what you want to see, right? Like, hey, will he stay healthy? Obviously, you're taking a risk there too if you're the Knicks because
If he
maybe
shows out, then maybe.
yeah, if he shows out, then maybe he's like, okay, well, I'll play this out to free agency too, and like let's see what happens. Let's see if some team wants to make me a big money offer. Um, but I'm not the Mitch one personally. I would like to just extend both and move on, but I think that's easier to say when I'm not staring at the cap sheet and crunching the numbers and understanding what the ramifications of X, Y, and Z are. They're playing a tight game with the second apron. We know that the second apron comes with some real severe restrictions as far as the ability to add talent in trades, even in free agency. You don't have any exceptions of the veterans minimum. Um, so how they balance that out will be interesting. I would feel very surprised if Mikal Bridges is not extended. Like I'm giving that like a 95% chance of happening prior to the season starting. Mitch, I don't know. I'm kind of like 50-50 on it. I could see it playing out either way. I know that there was the report that, from Begley a few weeks back, or maybe a week or two ago, that they're not extending Mikal because if they extend him, then he's trade restricted, and if Giannis becomes available, and blah blah blah. I don't think Giannis is going anywhere. Maybe they are holding on to Mikal for that reason alone. I suspect that it's maybe a little bit more complicated than that, and I don't think Giannis is going anywhere. And because I don't think Giannis is going anywhere, I imagine Mikal Bridges will remain on the Knicks. So I would expect that to get done in the offseason. Mitchell Robinson, again, not so sure about that one. I think that one might play out a bit.
Yeah. I think that they have kind of their ducks in a row. I do think like we are a little bit with some of these players, like you're either in the rotation or not. Do you feel like with Mike Brown, I don't know how much you've watched of him in Sacramento. I did notice that like even in the playoffs, right? Jarris Walker would not play at all. And then he'd come in for serious minutes in the Eastern Conference Finals, right? Obi's minutes were on a slider as well. So we've talked about the random Tuesday in February thing. Do you think it'll be a little bit less binary and kind of constant what the rotation is? Or are there games where it's like sometimes Dadier might not play, sometimes he might play 20 minutes? And that has its own drawbacks, right? Because players, if they're not comfortable with their role, we saw that with Deuce, right? Where he struggled to shoot. And if that is Dadier's issue, if it's something similar, maybe that's not the best. Do you think with Mike Brown, we see a shift, though, where there are nights where the 11th or 12th guy does get some minutes, even with, a high-performing team? Sometimes I do think they're going to rest Mitch because Huck Porty is a viable backup, and maybe with Diawara even you have another small ball 5 candidate. I'm curious if you think Mike Brown will be as binary, though, with his rotations as maybe Tibbs was.
I would guess that he isn't. I don't have anything strong to base that on. I know that his King stuff was a little bit more rigid, but I also look at that roster and I'm like, it was a kind of a weird amalgamation of talent in terms of the size and all, whatever. I don't know. I genuinely don't know. But what I would think is based on everything we read, all the reporting leading up to his hiring and in between between Tibbs's dismissal and Mike Brown's hiring, I would guess that he will be a little bit more willing to tweak things and change game to game, in game even. The main thing for me, and I've seen this, is like there seems to be this constant argument about like what should the Knicks starting 5 be? Do you stick with the starters from last year, which seems to be the least popular idea, which isn't surprising based on all the numbers that we talked about all of last season, which were not great with that group? Or, do you replace Josh Hart in the starting lineup with Deuce McBride? Or do you replace Josh Hart in the starting lineup with Mitch Robinson and play double big? I hope that there's not a hard and fast answer to that. That's my answer to it. Like, and that's really what I want to see from Mike Brown is I don't want for him to feel like X is clearly the right option, therefore I will not try Y. What I want to see is try X and try Y. And that can happen over the course of a game. Like that doesn't mean that if X is going, let's say he decides I'm going to start Deuce. Let's just assume that. I have no clue which way what his starting lineup would be. But let's say he's like, I'm going to start Deuce. Okay, start Deuce. That lineup can be good, and it should still be part of your goal as a coach to be like, okay, that lineup's going good. I can still, in the course of a game, I want to see what the starting lineup with Mitch in place of Deuce also looks like. And I think you want to develop those sample sizes over the course of the season, and you want to get a feel for what do these lineups look like? Like, what do they play like? How do they play? What are they capable of offensively? What are they capable of defensively? What opponents are they best suited for? These are the things that you want to see. And that's really the approach you're hoping to look for from Mike Brown, more so than like, will he just try shit? Like, trying shit is ultimately like, yeah, you want to try things, but you want to try things purposefully, not just for the sake of trying shit. You want to like actually have an idea of why do you want to try this thing? What are you trying to achieve? What are you attempting to get out of it? Because I think
there's a hypothesis you're testing,
right? And I think there's like a misconception of like, oh man, you guys are like hated on Tibbs. You just wanted him to like try shit and like you don't actually care about winning. You just cared about him like doing things, even if they would have cost you wins. And I'm like, well, we can't actually know if any of like maybe Tibbs, maybe he was 100% right that you know maybe he was right in his assessment that the starting lineup, as mediocre as it and flat out bad at points as it was, that over the course of 48 minutes, using Deuce McBride off the bench and using Mitchell Robinson off the bench and deploying that group with that rotation over the course of 48 minutes, the way he did it was maybe that was the actual optimal way to use the full group, the full rotation. I'm skeptical, but maybe he was right. I can't know he was right until you actually try other alternatives. And that is ultimately, that was the main frustration that at least I had with Tibbs, and I know a lot of fans had with Tibbs throughout his time, but especially last season. So if Mike Brown comes in and he picks a different starting lineup, but he's similarly stubborn about it and refuses to really use the regular season to purposefully kind of stretch the boundaries of the roster, see what it's capable of, see what various guys can do, then yeah, I will be disappointed. I'll be very, very disappointed. And I would be concerned, to be quite honest. So to answer your question, like, do I think he'll be a little bit more willing to view things in a less binary fashion than Tibbs? Yeah, I think so. Because if that was kind of like one of the main sticking points with Tibbs, presumably the guy you hired will be like would have. I mean, you would have vetted him for how kind of feels about those type of things during the process. So yeah, I am optimistic about it, but we'll see what the the proof is in the pudding. So we'll have to wait until the regular season, preseason and then regular season to find out. But yeah, I'm optimistic, and I am curious to see which way it goes. And I will say, like, I don't think you need to have that answer right now. Kind of like in terms of the starting lineup, which is this seems to be the constant debate I see lately of like who should start, what should the starting lineup be, and we can all have our hypotheses about what would be the best group, but personally, I think the best way for any coach we had hired to approach it would be like, I think X, I will try Y, and I might try Z, and we'll see what all three of those things look like, and then we'll figure out from there what is actually the best, and then subsequently what does the rest of the rotation look like, and blah blah blah.
Yeah, I mean, I was never on the binary. You have to start Deuce, you have to start Mitch, even though you can't start Hart. Although we obviously saw in large minutes that wasn't the most effective lineup. I've said this, right? I think against the Celtics, it was the right move to start Mitch. They went to Hack-a-Shaq or Hack-a-Mitch. So that kind of nullifies it by starting him. They had clear vulnerabilities with KP not being 100% healthy, and just Mitch being who he is on the offensive glass, which was if you're going to run a little bit more of a rudimentary offense, he's a perfect fit. And you needed rim protection because the Knicks and he could switch a little bit better than Cat. Right? He's better even when drop. He can play more aggressively to the level because of his length and because he probably has, even with the injuries, more quickness. Against the Pacers, I do think Deuce would have been better in the starting lineup. So you want a coach that can adapt and do all those things and kind of read the pulse, right? And you do want a coach that'll experiment. And there are teams that have experimented a lot, right? That win, right? We saw that with Indiana, obviously. But there's this famous video from a while back after the Mavs won. It was after the Thunder lost to the Heat, and Skip had this narrative that like LeBron finally wanted it enough, and Cuban said that's bullshit. He didn't lose to us because he choked. He lost because we put him in bad positions. But he said like we had the ability to play zone because we had a full season. We played a whole game in preseason of only zone. In the lockout shortened season, which Oklahoma City was going through, they might not have had that. They had better athletes. But that kind of speaks to just the value of experimentation, but it has to be driven, to your point, by some kind of informative prior. That we think this is going to work because in small samples it's worked. We need to give it more of a shot. Logically, it makes sense, right? Going 5 out or going too big we've seen too big work with Cat at the 4 at another somewhat similar team in Minnesota.
And
Um,
and the personnel has to make sense for the hypothesis, right? So like, just as like if you want to run double tight end looks, presumably you need tight ends that can like both block and can also like run routes. Like you need them to be able to be versatile. If you just have like pure run blocking tight ends, like you can't use that as a base personnel formation or something, right? Like that can be something you use every now and then, but it's a changeup. It's not part of your consistent look. I mean, the Knicks kind of did this last year, right? With yeah, you can try double big with Cat and Precious, and they did try. It didn't work, and he kept using it, and that was like frustrating because you're like, okay, and I'm hands up, hands raised. I actually thought the Cat Precious lineup. I was like, I went into the season. I was like, I would bet this lineup is pretty good. I would bet that they're actually pretty decent, and they were terrible. But that's the thing. It's like once you kind of know it's terrible, and it's largely because Precious played like a fucking space cadet the entire year. You just move on. Like you just try something else. Like that should have been, and that was the frustrating part with Huck 40, right? Where you were like, you saw flashes, and then you're also seeing as the season continues to kind of go on and go on before Mitch comes back, that Precious is not giving you anything out there. He's not playing well. So it's like, okay, well, why not play Huck 40 then? Because now not only are you like you're not just nominally playing two bigs because Precious is more of a wing size player in a lot of ways than a true big. But like so now you're actually playing the double bigs, right? You're actually getting two bigs, and it gave you it would have given you a reasonable facsimile of like, okay, this guy obviously is not Mitch. Ariel Hukporti is not Mitch right now. He's not as impactful. He's not as good, but he is the closest thing we have to Mitch until Mitch gets back, which can help us kind of figure shit out of how do we want to run the offense? What will the offense look like? How do we run? How do we cover everything defensively? What is our base coverage going to be? What are rotate? Like all this stuff could have been at least attempted to be worked on prior to Mitch getting back by using Hukporti more because he gives you a similar, kind of the same archetype of player, I should say, not similar because Mitch is fucking. I mean, he's fucking great. But like, you have the same archetype of player, so you can kind of figure that stuff out. Instead, we just again, it was a season of nothing, and I mean that was like the really frustrating part of last season where you're like, I've learned nothing about this team. Like everything I know about this team is stuff I could have told you before they rolled the ball out there, right? Like it was just very frustrating. And even if there was some stuff that kind of revealed itself as the season went on, within the first month we kind of knew what the hell it was, and there was just no adjustments being made. So,
well, I would push back on that a little bit because the offense was very effective until teams started putting a center on Hart, right?
So, but it was still not the Knicks' best lineups, right? Like that's ultimately like this actually is really the point we were talking about earlier, where it's like you don't need like there can be multiple good lineups. Obviously, you want to have multiple good lineups, but even in the part of the season that you're talking about, so like really up to like January 1st or whatever, like yes, the starters were fine. I think they were like a plus 3 something. I don't remember what the hell their net rating was. Please don't quote me. I want to say like a plus 3.2 or something like that. But the offense was really good. It was really good to start the year. But they also had lineups that were really good on offense and better on defense, with like 4 of the starters and 1 out or whatever. Like their different combinations were better, and yet we still didn't see those adjustments. It's like that doesn't just be like you can go back to that starting lineup. Like they're going to play minutes over the course of a game, no matter what, right? Like that's just kind of how your minutes are going to play out. They're going to see some time together on the floor, but for it to have stuck to as religiously. And has as consistently throughout the season, regardless of performance, that was a real big downfall for the team. I mean, yeah, downfall maybe is a strong word given that he didn't make it to the Eastern Conference Finals, but it was, and I think it proved to be an issue for them, and it's one that you want to avoid. Of like, okay, if the bad lineup is bad, cut the bad lineup, cut the bad lineups minutes, and play better lineups, and figure that shit out during the regular season. Whereas what we had was, okay, we didn't do anything through the regular season. We actually didn't try anything again in the playoffs, really. And then 2 games into an Eastern Conference Finals, you're changing your starting lineup and then completely changing your rotations, and like you don't actually have information or enough information to kind of inform how you go about that, right? Like it's easier for Rick Carlisle to make these type of adjustments, in series adjustments. Why? Because he tries shit through the course of the regular season, so he has like his intuition is then guided by actual data, actual numbers, actual, okay, I know what this group looks like. Whereas with Tibbs, he had to rely on his intuition, and he's flying blind, right? He's just like, yeah, this is the best thing we can do right now. And then these will be the best lineups, and that's what it is. And yeah, I mean, is that the reason the Knicks lost the series to the Pacers? I don't know. I don't know if you want to always only chalk it up to one thing, but there's a reason why I don't think either of us was like super upset about Tibbs being canned, and you know, a lot of that series, and I mean a lot of the playoffs, a lot of the season was just like you kind of were like, yeah, this is just really frustrating, and it needs to change.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely seems to put a ceiling on it. I mean, I was that Detroit series, right? I don't think that should have been that close. And that's not disrespect to Detroit, but Jalen Brunson, and I think what we'll find out is some data. Because I think that there are people who are on the extreme that Jalen Brunson is just the ball hog. I don't think either you and me believe that. We saw him thrive next to Luka. That also wasn't a primary role, right? And so with this whole, kind of small guard be the best player on a winning team, the guy we've seen do that was neither off ball or on ball necessarily. He was some kind of hybrid. That's Steph. Even Tony Parker, you can say, played within a motion-oriented offense. So this is going to be a little bit. Do you think it's fair to say this year is going to be a little bit of a referendum on Brunson? Because if they still have the same style, or it's not, I'm not saying they have to go full Phoenix Suns or Golden State to the extreme, but if they're not doing stuff with him off ball, maybe that's a limitation of the roster. They still don't really have a great secondary perimeter playmaker. We'll see if Bridges, if Brown can make things easier. But do you think this is going to be a more scrutinized year because if it doesn't work again, or if you see the same thing, that might end up just being a Brunson thing. Like this is just how he has to be if he's the lead ball handler.
I don't know. I mean,
because I think me and you have both blamed Tibbs for Brunson having to do everything, right? If it doesn't,
yeah, I mean, if that doesn't change, it's definitely, certainly to an extent, a referendum on Brunson. But we just have to see what it looks like, right? Like if it plays out the same way, but there's no inclination or no indication that like Mike Brown is upset with it or trying to change it or whatever, then maybe we just need to accept that like that's just what Mike Brown is doing here, and maybe that's what he also thinks is the best way for it to be successful. But if there are attempts being made to take the ball out of Brunson's hands and have him adjust and also play faster, right? Get the ball up the floor faster instead of having everything be so deliberate. And you don't, if those things are there are indications, there are numbers from Summer League and quotes from Mike Brown and Jordan Brink, the assistant coach who was the head coach for Summer League, acting head coach for Summer League, that indicate that like the Knicks were very purposefully trying to get themselves comfortable and implement kind of concepts to speed up the offense, speed up getting the ball up the floor, getting into your offensive flow faster. That they were trying to do that at Summer League, and there are stats that show that they were successful in at least improving the pace relative to the pace at which the Knicks played at last season as a team. If we don't see those things, and we see a lot of Brunson walking the ball at the floor and waiting for the final fucking millisecond of the shot clock to get the ball across the half court line, and then everybody's standing around and he calls for a screen, and like if it's just all very, very deliberate, yeah, I think it's probably fair to be like, this seems to be an issue for Jalen Brunson. This seems to be something that he needs to get himself out of. And these are bad habits, and they're holding back the team, and they're holding back the collective, and they're holding back the coach from doing what he wants. The reason I don't give Tibbs that courtesy or grace, I guess, I'm not saying you are, or other maybe you are, I don't know. But the reason I don't give him that grace is because, I mean, I watched his entire career as head coach. He's always loved to like it's his preference, and I know it because this is the same fucking shit. He's from that Doc Rivers tree, the Jeff Van Gundy tree of coaches who think that like they're control freaks. They want to be able to control every single element, and they want it to be slow, and they want to have like they don't want the game to get crazy and all these type of things. Like I've seen that from Tibbs. I've seen that from him in Chicago. I've seen that from him in Minnesota. I saw that from him in New York. A lot of the complaints that Knicks fans had are the same complaints that Minnesota fans had, are the same complaints that Bulls fans had. I think also that like Tibbs was a good coach. There were pros to that style. There were like the Knicks were a low turnover team, right? They were a great offensive rebounding team. All these type of like there were strengths to his approach, but there certainly were limitations. And I certainly believe that the style of play that the Knicks had under him was more indicative of him versus Jalen Brunson because we saw the same shit play out even before they got Jalen Brunson. We saw them play the same fucking way where it's like end of games was a lot of pound the ball, pound the ball, pound the ball, pound the ball, get the ball to your best guy, let him cook, right? That was like the offense always. So, yeah, if that goes unchanged, sure, I think people would be well within their right to start questioning maybe what's going on with Jalen Brunson.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that. I think in general, so the Athletic released a piece today where they ranked all the teams, and obviously in preseason, you can definitely we've thrown shade at those when they underrate the Knicks, but the Knicks were ranked number 2 by the Athletic, behind only Oklahoma City. So by the Athletics rankings, the Knicks are the best team in the East. One, do you agree with that? And two, is it fair to say that every year, I don't think we've ever said championship or bust, right? The first year, it was just supposed to be rebuilding. Thibodeau exceeded that. The next year, the goal was, let's win a playoff series. It didn't happen. The next year was win a playoff series, and it did happen. And then the last 2 years have been, Boston still looms. Like, we're not clearly the best team in the East. We're not, there are teams ahead of us. Last year, they beat Boston. But Eastern Conference Finals still, on the grand scheme of things, that's not what Tibbs didn't get fired for the result, right? It got fired for more process. But is this the first time in the Rose era where it's legitimately, and I understand championship or bust for a lot of people can be even John Harbaugh, whose team is expected every year to compete for a Super Bowl, pushed back on that. He doesn't like that. But football is also a little bit different. Is it fair to say that this year's championship or bust for the Knicks?
I mean, I think every season for the next couple anyway are going to be viewed through that lens.
But this is especially because Boston has a year off. Indiana has a year off, right? Your threats are Cleveland, which has its vulnerabilities, and we are going to have the best player on the floor in that series, and we've seen how much that matters against Cleveland. And then, other than that, you're looking at jumps from Detroit or Orlando. I don't think it's ever been this wide open in the East in the Rose era.
Yeah, I mean, I even if it was, they didn't have the teams necessarily to take advantage of it. So they do now. Yeah, I mean, you could argue this is their best chance. You could argue last year was their best chance though too. Like maybe last year was their best chance. Who knows? Like we see this every year. Like things change so fast in the NBA. I mean, literally a month ago, right? About a month ago, we all like the common held perception was Indiana they are the favorite in the East moving forward, and they are set to have a period here of being able to kind of keep this group together and assert some control over the conference. That was a possibility. And now that doesn't exist because things change that fast, right? Tyrese Halliburton ruptures his Achilles, Miles Turner bounces in free agency to Milwaukee. Like crazy things happen in the NBA. Crazy things happen that change the trajectory of franchises, that change the course of the entire league. They can occur overnight. I mean, and who's to say in-season trades don't change the picture, right? Like you mentioned Atlanta. I don't think right now that they're a strong threat to beat the Knicks in a 7-game series. Like a threat, but not, one that, to me, there's a difference between does this team have a chance versus like, I'm actually not really like comfortable at all playing this team. I think they have maybe a better chance than expected. That's kind of how I felt about Indiana in 2023-24. That had more to do with injuries, for the record, for the Knicks than the Pacers themselves. But I did think that people were a little bit dismissive of them prior to the series even starting. But like, what's to say Atlanta? They have that pick from New Orleans. Maybe that they package that in trade, and they're able to level up and get, I don't fucking know, some awesome player that we don't even think about right now as being available in the trade market, and that changes their trajectory, and all of a sudden we're like, holy shit, this team is a lot better than we thought. I mean, that's basically what did happen with Indiana in 23-24, right? This Pascal Siakam trade. That like changed that happened with us in 23-24, the OG Anunoby trade. So like, there's just things that can occur that change how a team's level and how that team's ability to contend or compete are altered. I would say as things stand, yeah. I mean, the Knicks are definitely, they should be feeling like, hey, this is a great opportunity to get to the finals. This is a great opportunity to get to the finals. And
Oklahoma City got taken to 7 games, so that's not some unbeatable juggernaut either.
Right, and we can also say like they fired the coach in part because they lost that series to Indiana, and I don't think it was just about losing that series. I do think that it had a lot more to do with like how and just the overall totality of the season and how it played out. Like again, the Boston series, yes, the Knicks won. I think it's stupid when people are like, oh, they just won because they got lucky, because luck is part of anything. But I mean, if you play out that series 100 times, how many times the Knicks win games 1 and 2? Honestly, like 5%.
Yeah. And it all seemed a lot very unnecessary to go down 20, right? The way it happened. So.
Right, exactly. So it's like you came back and won these games, but why the fuck were you even down 20 in the first place? Why does it like what was going on with this team? What is going on with how you're coaching this team? So you would say that just based on how the Knicks kind of led their decision making this offseason, that they themselves seem to be carrying themselves as like, hey, yeah, this was a good season. Yeah, getting to the Eastern Conference was good, but we can and should strive to do better. And like, what is better? It's getting to the finals. It's winning a finals. Like they clearly are carrying themselves like a title or bust type of team. So if people want to hold them to that standard, I have no problem with that, because the Knicks are holding themselves to that standard, is what it seems like to me.
Yeah. I mean, I think they're going for it. But I am curious, how much comes back on Rose. On the one hand, you probably want him to be able to see this iteration out. And if they don't win a championship with these 2 years after these 3 years, I think you and I both agree is the window for this iteration. I wonder, if that comes back on him. But I think that it's very tough. If they lose in the Eastern Conference Finals to Cleveland, I understand that. Besides Cleveland, Oklahoma City, I don't think it's acceptable really to lose to anyone else. We'll see what happens with teams in the West. The Clippers have quietly built a pretty formidable roster, but it's aging. It looks like this is the year, because the year after, Boston will be back, Indiana will be back. And I still think that the Knicks have superior rosters to what both of them will be. But this is the year. I do want to pivot a little bit here. So today, Fred Katz, I think, released, I don't know if it's Begley or Katz. There's a report that the Knicks are interested in Pablo Prigioni, obviously a fan favorite. I always loved watching him play. I think it's a little bit funny and ironic that on the one hand, he's an offensive guy who I think would push for a higher 3-point attempt rate. That was one of my biggest frustrations with him. There's that famous GIF or however you want to pronounce it, of Mike Woodson doing like a hallelujah when Prigioni finally took a contested three as a 42% or whatever it was 3-point shooter. Rarely pulled the trigger, or he didn't pull the trigger as often as he should have. But I haven't followed Prigioni too much. I know Minnesota has had a lot of success. Micah Nori was a guy that the Knicks had interviewed for the head coaching position, or he was a candidate that was listed. They're asking permission to talk to Pablo. I don't know how familiar. I'm not as well up to speed on the kind of assistant coaches, and it's tough to tell. Do you think he would be the lead assistant coach, the associate head coach title? I'm curious your thoughts on that, or if you have any. Obviously, he's a player we both watched for a while, and I don't think there's any Knicks fan who has a bad thing to say about Pablo. Obviously, a very intelligent player on the court. So,
yeah, Pablo is great. I think he has he holds there's something. I mean, that entire 2012-13 team, it is like it's like an oasis in a desert. It's like Zach and fucking Tyrese. The only reason they're Knicks fans is because that team existed. They're probably like, oh man, this means we're going to be good for the next. It's like the Padme meme, where she's like, oh, we're gonna make the playoffs in the next 5 years, right? Like, so yeah, no, I mean, yeah, Pablo was great. He was awesome. 35-year-old rookie. I probably honestly, it was the one thing where you were like, I know he's 35, but what if we played him 25 minutes a night? Can he do it? We can do it. He was great. I have no thoughts on this as far as coaching, because I have not bothered to look into him as a coach. I don't know what his strengths. I know he was an offensive.
Because Micah's the defensive guy, right? So
right. So he seems to be more focused on the offensive side of the ball. I think I think it almost feels like his role maybe has been trimmed down a bit over the last couple of years, based on some of the reporting I saw. I could be wrong on that. So, but what I will say is this: the two things that stand out to me are this: the Knicks needed a head coach they needed coaching. Let me rephrase this. I think two things that were 100% that the Knicks needed to improve upon are their pace of play. And I want to be very clear about what I mean by pace of play. I am not talking about I go to Basketball Reference and I pull up the pace stat and it shows me where each team ranks in pace. No. That's not what I'm talking about. I am simply talking about getting the ball up the court and getting into your offense. That's it. That does not mean that you jack up a shot within the first 7 seconds. That doesn't mean that you're playing, fucking sprinting up and down the floor. No, it means getting the ball, getting into your offense faster than with 14 seconds left on the shot clock, so that you can run multiple actions, multiple sets in a possession. That is something that the Knicks did not do a good job of for years under Tibbs, as far as I'm concerned. And in fact, I think you could argue that the best they ever kind of did do with in the best pace they played with was the pace they played with after Randall and OG, to an extent, also got hurt in the 23-24 season. They had to play Hartenstein at center and whatever. I thought that was the best half-court offense they played, where they felt like there was a lot of movement and cutting and passing, more so anyways, than what was typical of a Tibbs team, or at least typical of what the Knicks under Tibbs were. So that's one. The second thing is their 3-point attempt rate fell off a fucking cliff last year. I mean, it was terrible. They finished 28th in the league in 3-point attempt rate. 28th in the
for
NBA.
a team playing a stretch 5.
28th. Here are the two teams that finished worse than them: the Toronto Raptors at 29th, and then the Denver Nuggets at 30th. Who, I mean, wow. That's not that surprising to me. Jokic does a lot but that's not good either. That's a team that, and I'm sure that was part of their, you look at the moves they made this offseason, right? They signed, obviously they trade for Cam Johnson, but
what do you think drove that low attempt rate for? Because they have a stretch 5 too.
It's been years for them like this. They just do not have enough shooters. Murray doesn't like to Murray doesn't like to spot up shoot, right? He wants to get into the paint.
Do you think inverting the offense actually decreases the 3-point attempt rate because it creates those cutting lanes and all that?
Well, I think I think with the Nuggets, it's a little weird because Jokic is effectively their point guard. So even though he is a stretch five, like you're not using him to create space for others, right? Like he is the center point of your offense.
But
He is
also, he's pulling that big away, so that means that the opportunities of the rim and the guy who can find
right,
those cutters are there, right? So
right. You're right. He's not dynamically like you're not like he's not going to run a pick and roll, and then you're going to have like the way he run. Even when he does run a pick and roll, and he does because Jokic is a fucking lunatic. He's not running it in a way that is going to generate a shit ton of like quality threes, right? Because to some extent, your rotations can be a little bit slower on Jokic. And then, yeah, he just also has freakish like touch. So he'll take these weird ass, like one legged side going floaters that all drop in at like 60%. And you're like, all right, I guess we have to live with that. Like, I don't really know what the alternative is here. Um, but anyway, to get back to it, the Knicks were 30th or 28th in the league last year in 3-point attempt rate. The Minnesota Timberwolves were sixth, and that to me,
and they also don't have like a well spaced lineup, right? They lack shooters, so
yeah, they don't have like the most dynamic shooting team ever. Dante obviously helped, but he didn't play a ton for them this past season. Like he played a good amount, but he missed time, and he wasn't even in the starting lineup, right? So like it was more than just like, oh, they got Dante or they got Randall. Randall missed a bunch of time last year too, right? So I think that is interesting when it comes to Pablo Prigioni. And again, what I will say is the Knicks lost Johnny Bryant last year. He goes to Cleveland. They were fifth last year in 3-point attempt rate, and the Knicks had been consistently among the best in the league in terms of just volume of threes generated prior to him going to Cleveland. And obviously, there are more changes than just Johnny Bryant leaving for Cleveland last year, as we know, to the Knicks roster. But I do think it's noteworthy that that's true. And yeah, that's the only thing about the Paolo Prigioni hire that I have any kind of thoughts on is there seems to be this
is
seems
it
to be
confirmed or are you saying potential hire? I haven't checked.
potential hire. I don't believe it's confirmed. Potential hire. So that's the only thing I would say. That's my only specific thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's interesting because they've now interviewed or have been interested in the two main point guards on that team from 2012, 2013. Probably just a coincidence. What's the timeline? Do you think? I can't remember how long it took for Tibbs, or even when he got hired. What do you think the timeline? I mean, obviously it has to be before training camp to get your staff in place. How do you think Knicks fans should expect this staff to kind of shake out? I mean, there's going to be some people returning, so maybe there's a little bit of structure there, but curious to how you see it playing out.
I have no idea. I have no clue. I think that they will get the coaching staff done by I don't fucking know. End of middle of August, start of August. I don't know. I have no clue. I'm not that worried about it. I think that I will just. At this point. I'm like, I sound like a fucking shill. I sound like Pam Bondi. I just trust the president. I just trust the president, Stacey. I just trust President Leon Rose to make the right decisions. And
should we be more Cash Patels?
Yeah. So I will. Yeah. I don't know. Let's just say start of August. I feel like there's, we got the report to this week also that Terry Stotts will be staying Golden State. Then we got this.
I think that was a guy you were pretty high on, right?
Yeah, I actually had no idea that he was even in Golden State. So it shows you what I want to know about the NBA. But like, I think like 15 minutes later or something is when that Pablo news came out. Feels like if they're hiring, if they are interviewing him, they're likely interviewing him for a higher position than he has with the Timberwolves, which I imagine would be appealing to him. He presumably has a relationship with Karl Anthony Towns, which is a good thing. Probably, unless he hates Karl Anthony Towns, which I don't think he does. I actually think like Karl Towns would probably be, if you actually were like friends with him or like knew him personally, he feels like one of the weirdest people to hate, like, or the most unlikely people to hate. like if you actually knew him in real life and not just as Karl Anthony Towns basketball player.
I don't think he's very hateable as a basketball player either, but it's
Well,
the discourse has just gotten stupid about it. But
well, that's its own conversation, which I have no desire to get into right now.
oh, you think I hate Towns because I was like in the playoffs? Nah, I like the Towns overall. I think it's a good move. I like him as a player.
Oh no, I'm not even saying that. I'm just saying I just think like anything, people sports hate athletes, right? Like sports hate aside, like I'm just saying it'd be weird if Pablo Prigioni didn't have a good relationship with Towns just because he seems like a guy who probably has good relationships with most people that he comes across in life. Um anyway, yeah, like I don't know. The Pablo thing feels like that's probably going to happen just based on how I'm reading the
Also, he's
report.
comfortable with New York, right? With Stotts, you forget like a lot of these people have families, right? So Stotts, if he's in Golden State, if he has high school age kids or whatever, if he's settled there, moving across the country, even for maybe a better team, and he probably is Kerr's top assistant if he's there, right? Pablo has familiarity with the New York area. I do think with the assistant coaching stuff, I think they're clearly going after an offensive guy. They realize that Brown is going to be a defensive guy, and he's thrived when he had Jordi Fernandez in Sacramento, right? So that seems to work, just like Tibbs and Bryant seem to work. So I think like getting an offensive guy as a top assistant is important to me, and I hope they, I really wanted them to get Borrego. That's not going to happen. And I think it's interesting if Prigioni does a lot of one-on work with Brunson, right? He's almost the platonic kind of complement to Brunson, right? Not a great space creator, or at least in the NBA. But he plays in a more wide open style, moving the ball, moving without the ball, looking for the pass. He's a pass first guy. And I'm curious, it's not like Brunson in terms of player development, right? It's not the priority. But in terms of getting him to embrace, I think he'll embrace anything that helps him win. I'm not worried about that. But kind of being able to instill that mindset, even on a subconscious level, that's the kind of point guard I would want around Brunson, right? A guy like Pablo. If he played like Pablo, if he had Brunson's skill in kind of Pablo's mindset, that seems like a pretty formidable force.
Yeah, totally agree with that. So yeah, we'll see. The coaching search is what it is. The most important domino obviously was hiring Mike Brown. They hired some other assistant, right? Ricardo Voice or something that was reported at Summer League. He seems to be an assistant that they'll be. He was on his staff in Golden State or Sacramento rather, so it seems like he'll be part of the staff with the Knicks as well. So that's cool. But yeah, I'm not too concerned about it. I think obviously the timing of when they hired Mike Brown and everything probably makes filling out the assistant staff a little bit more challenging than it would be. It wouldn't surprise me if we see more kind of turnover after this upcoming season. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not too concerned about all of that. I don't know. Stacey, is there anything else that you wanted to get into before we get out of here?
No, I think it's a good place to stop.
Yeah, unfortunately, the off season.
The dog days of July.
Yeah, the dog days are here. We will cook up some more interesting summer fare moving forward. So we'll have that for you next week. Other than that, I think that's a good place to end this. So, Stacey, let people know they can find you and plug anything that you would like to plug.
Nothing to plug. You can find me at StacyPadden89 on the website formerly known as Twitter. And
yeah. You can also find me on Twitter at Shwin. I will plug the article that Miranda wrote yesterday. That was really fun piece. Check that out on the Strickland. It is a paywall piece, so there's a free preview that's available on the website. But if you want the full piece, subscribe to the Patreon. It is worth it. All right, that is our show for today. I hope everybody has a great week, and I'll see you. And I'm recording. I will be recording a pod either tomorrow or Friday. So I'll have that out for you too. Other than that, again, have a great week, and I'll see you on Friday. Peace.